When European sailors discovered Easter Island in the 18th century, not a single palm tree was left, and the statues had been toppled.
Beneath a wind-scoured plain in the South Pacific, something once thought lost was quietly waiting. For centuries, Easter Island was seen as a cautionary tale of collapse.
Easter Island, we have these huge heads and torsos that are carved out of the volcanic rock. They are called the moai.
Its towering statues standing like tombstones of a vanished people. But new discoveries are challenging that story, revealing a civilization that didn't fall, it adapted. To understand how the myth began, we have to start with what the world saw on the surface. Surface illusion. When European explorers first arrived on Easter Island in 1722, they were greeted not by lush forests or bustling cities, but by endless grasslands and rows of towering stone heads, half buried in earth. The scene seemed frozen, giants in decay, watching over an empty world. Early accounts described a people diminished, their tools crude, their resources seemingly exhausted. To outside observers, the statues looked like the unfinished work of a fallen civilization, abandoned mid-task. Over time, that impression hardened into a story, that the Rapa Nui had once flourished, but cut down every last tree, turned on one another, and collapsed in isolation. This interpretation fit neatly into a broader narrative of ecological caution. Historians like Jared Diamond popularized the idea of ecocide, that the islanders destroyed their environment through overpopulation and resource greed. In this version, the moai became symbols of hubris, their silent stares warnings of what happens when humans push their world too far. The story spread, appearing in textbooks, documentaries, and museum exhibits, often without question. But there was a problem with this story. It was built almost entirely on what could be seen above ground. Very little excavation had ever been done. Very few islanders had been asked. And beneath those statues, something entirely different was waiting. A hidden world beneath the statues. The turning point came not from a theory, but from a shovel. As archaeologists began to excavate around the moai, those iconic stone heads jutting from the earth, they uncovered something remarkable. The heads weren't heads at all. Each one was part of a full, intricately carved human figure, buried deep in volcanic soil. Shoulders, torsos, arms folded across bellies. Entire bodies had been hidden beneath centuries of sediment. This wasn't a case of nature swallowing statues by accident. The burial was deliberate, protective, and astonishingly consistent. What lay beneath was even more revealing. The backs of many moai were etched with detailed carvings, spirals, crescents, and symbols still being decoded. These were not decorations but messages, marks of lineage, memory, and sacred authority. The moai were not merely sculptures. They were sentinels, guardians turned inward to watch over villages, not seaward to repel threats. Their purpose had been misread for generations. Further excavations beneath the ceremonial stone platforms, ahu, uncovered sealed chambers cut into bedrock. These were burial vaults, precisely engineered without mortar, using stones so tightly fitted they resisted water, time, and earthquakes. Inside were the remains of chiefs, artisans, and spiritual leaders laid to rest with obsidian tools, jewelry from distant islands, and wooden artifacts carved by master hands. Some chambers held multiple generations of the same lineage, buried under monuments that remained undisturbed above ground for centuries. These finds told a radically different story. The islanders weren't halting unfinished work. They were preserving legacy, layering the sacred into earth and stone, generation after generation. The island that learned to adapt. For a civilization accused of destroying its own home, the Rapa Nui left behind a surprising signature. Thousands of stone rings scattered across the landscape, carefully built and precisely placed. These were manavai, circular stone enclosures designed not to honor ancestors or house the dead, but to cultivate life. At first glance, they look unremarkable, low walls enclosing barren patches of earth. But recent satellite mapping and soil analysis revealed a system of astonishing ingenuity. These structures weren't decorative, they were environmental tools. The stone walls created microclimates, buffering crops from the island's punishing winds, trapping moisture in the air, and regulating temperature extremes in the soil. In a place where sun could scorch seedlings and rain could vanish for weeks, these rings acted like greenhouses without glass. Inside them, islanders grew taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, and sugarcane, and they did it long after the forests were gone. There are over 3,000 moai across the island, a scale of planning and labor that rivals the moai themselves. The comparison to ancient Andean terrace farming is no exaggeration. Both are examples of indigenous engineering adapted to extreme conditions. This wasn't a people blindly depleting resources. It was a society observing patterns, learning from hardship, and building infrastructure to survive it. In fact, soil samples from inside the moai show higher fertility and better water retention than outside areas even centuries later. This revelation rewrites the ecological timeline. It proves that agriculture continued and even evolved after deforestation. It also erodes the assumption that Easter Island's decline came from environmental failure. What we see instead is resilience made visible, stone by stone, garden by garden, activating the sacred. While stone gardens sustained the body, rituals sustained the soul. Deep near the Rano Raraku quarry, the same site where the moai were born, archaeologists uncovered dozens of underground pits, each one lined with stone and sealed with fitted lids. Inside lay caches of vibrant red pigment, perfectly preserved across centuries. This wasn't random residue or discarded paint. It was hematite and magamite, iron-rich compounds that produced a deep crimson color, carefully prepared and protected like treasure. In Polynesian tradition, red symbolizes mana, spiritual power, life force, and sacred authority. Chiefs wore it, rituals invoked it, and moai were transformed by it. When painted with this pigment, the statues were no longer passive. They became animated presences, living intermediaries between the people and the divine. Traces of this red still cling to statues housed in museums today, including Hahakananaya in the British Museum, one of the few moai taken from the island with its pigmentation intact. Even more remarkable was what followed decades later, the discovery of the coral eyes. In 1978, white coral fragments were found scattered near some of the moai platforms. When reconstructed, they revealed what had been hidden in plain sight. The statues were not meant to be hollow-eyed. Their sockets had once held gleaming white eyes with pupils made from obsidian or red scoria, materials chosen for their contrast and ritual potency. Once installed, sunlight would catch the eyes at precise angles, making the statues seem to glow. To the islanders, it wasn't an illusion, it was awakening. These eyes weren't added until the very end of a statue's journey, after carving, transport, and ceremonial placement. Only select moai received them, suggesting a hierarchy not just among the living, but among the ancestors themselves. The pigment, the eyes, the light, each element was part of a larger transformation. Stone became spirit, memory became presence. Memory made permanent. If pigment gave the moai presence and gardens gave the people food, it was language that preserved their history. In 1864, a French missionary named Eugène Ayrault documented something strange inside Rapa Nui homes. Wooden tablets carved with rows of mysterious symbols. They were not decorative nor random. The islanders called them rongo rongo, a word rooted in chanting and oral recitation. What he found may have been the only indigenous writing system ever developed in Polynesia. Carved with obsidian tools or shark teeth, the symbols included birds, plants, human figures, and abstract shapes, arranged in alternating directions, a method called boustrophodon, like a plow moving back and forth across a field. This structure, combined with repetition patterns, suggested syntax, lineage records, ceremonial phrases, or even calendrical data. But by then, the chain of transmission was already broken. Disease, slave raids, and colonial disruption had decimated the population and silenced the elders. Within a generation, Rongorongo had become unreadable. Still, the tablet stood as proof that this was never an illiterate or simplistic society. Memory was made tangible here, etched into driftwood and preserved through ritual speech. In a world where few societies combined oral tradition with symbolic writing, the Rapa Nui were outliers and innovators. Around 1400 Common Era, this same culture underwent a seismic internal shift. Moai construction stopped abruptly. Quarries were abandoned mid-carving. In their place rose a new religious order, the Birdman cult. Its spiritual center was Orongo, perched on the rim of the Rano volcano. There, elite competitors risked their lives each year, retrieving the first egg of the sooty tern from an offshore islet. The winner's sponsor became the Birdman, ruler of the island for a year. In place of hereditary rule, power now came through endurance, divine favor, and physical risk. What looked like collapse from the outside was in fact transformation. A society facing change reshaped its myths, its leadership, and its spiritual practices to survive a harder world. The real collapse. For all the stories told about Easter Island's collapse, none match the brutality of what actually happened. Recent DNA analysis, drawn from human remains found across archaeological layers, has revealed a society that remained stable for centuries. Lineages held, communities persisted, agricultural systems continued to function, and sacred sites were maintained well into the 1600s. There is no genetic or material evidence of widespread famine, civil war, or mass death, at least not until outsiders arrived. The true collapse began in the 18th and 19th centuries, after European ships dropped anchor. With them came smallpox, tuberculosis, and other foreign diseases to which the islanders had no natural resistance. Entire families vanished within weeks, but the deadliest blow came not from microbes, but from men. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders abducted nearly half the island's population, dragging them to labor camps in South America. The few survivors who returned brought with them another wave of disease. What followed was devastating. By the late 1800s, Easter Island's population had fallen from over 3,000 to just 111 people. Entire oral traditions were extinguished in a single generation. The elders who carried the memory of how the moai were carved, how the eyes were installed, how the tablets were read, were gone. When researchers found unfinished statues, scattered tools, and toppled platforms, they assumed the society had collapsed centuries earlier. But in truth, they were witnessing the wreckage of colonial violence, not ecological failure. The moai did not fall in ancient times. They were brought down in mourning. History misread Easter Island as a warning of collapse, greed, and isolation. But the truth buried beneath the soil tells a different story. A culture that adapted, endured, and engineered its survival. If this changed what you thought you knew, subscribe for more hidden histories, and share this story to help rewrite the past.